I stood in my apartment at 11:25 at night, staring at my phone. My mother's text glowed on the screen. "You're not invited to Sarah's farewell party tomorrow. It's family only." I had just transferred $8,900 to help my sister move to London for her dream job. My finger hovered over another text from Mom. "Why make this awkward?" I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my banking app and froze the international wire transfer I had initiated 3 hours ago. Then I started drafting an email to my sister's landlord. "My name is Jean, and I'm 32 years old. I work as a senior project manager at a mid-sized tech consulting firm in Austin, Texas. I make $78,000 a year. It's comfortable, but I'm not wealthy by any means. I've always been the responsible one in my family, the person everyone could count on when things went wrong. My parents, Linda and Robert, live in Houston, about 2.5 hours away from me. My sister Sarah is 28 and had been working as a marketing coordinator making $42,000 annually. 3 weeks before that night, Sarah called me. She was crying, but they were tears of excitement mixed with panic. She had been offered a position at a prestigious London marketing agency. The salary was £90,000, which translated to approximately $117,000. It was the opportunity of a lifetime, the kind of career move that could change everything for her. But there was a problem. She needed funds immediately for the security deposit, first month's rent, and moving costs. The total she needed was $12,000, and she needed it fast. Sarah had already maxed out her credit cards on her wedding 6 months earlier to her husband, Brad. They had spent nearly $35,000 on that wedding, and most of it had gone on credit. When she first asked me, I hesitated. I had exactly $14,300 in my savings account. I had been saving for 3 years to buy my first home. Every extra dollar from every paycheck had gone into that account. I had sacrificed vacations, new clothes, dinners out with friends. That money represented my future, my independence, my chance to finally have something that was mine. Sarah promised she would pay me back within 4 months once she got settled in London and started receiving her salary. My parents encouraged me when I called them for advice. Mom said, "Family helps family, Jean. She would do it for you." Dad added, "You're doing well for yourself. Sarah needs this more than you need a house right now. Houses will always be there." So I agreed. I transferred $8,900 to her account 5 days before that Friday night. I kept some money back for emergencies, but I gave her nearly everything I had saved. She was supposed to leave for London in 1 week. I also co-signed her apartment lease in London as a guarantor because Brad's credit score was too poor for the landlord to accept him. I signed those documents without really thinking about what it meant, about what I was risking. 2 days before that Friday, Sarah mentioned casually during a phone call, "Mom's throwing me a farewell party on Saturday at their house. It's going to be nice, just a little gathering before I leave." I assumed I was invited. I started planning to drive to Houston. I even bought a going-away gift for her, a leather journal and an expensive pen set for her new career. It cost me $200, but I wanted her to have something special. On Friday night, I texted my mom around 9 o'clock asking what time I should arrive at the party the next day. I wanted to leave early to avoid traffic on Interstate 35. Her response came 20 minutes later, and it felt like a punch to the stomach. "The party is family only, Jean. Sarah wants it intimate. Just parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, and Brad's family." I stared at that message for a full minute, reading it over and over. I typed back, "I'm your son. I'm family." Mom's response was quick. "You know what I mean. Sarah's been really stressed with the move. Don't make this awkward." My hands were shaking as I called Sarah directly. She answered on the 4th ring, and I could hear music and laughter in the background. She was already celebrating. "What's up?" she said, her tone casual and light. "Mom said I'm not invited to your party tomorrow," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Is that true?" There was a pause, and then her voice changed. It became cold, almost annoyed. "It's my party, Jean. I can invite who I want. You're making this weird. I just gave you almost $9,000. I said, my voice rising despite my effort to stay calm. "I co-signed your lease. I'm your brother, and I appreciate that," she said. But there was no warmth in her words. "But this party is about me and what I need right now. I need it to be small and intimate. I don't need you there making it about you. Making it about me," I repeated, stunned. "How am I making this about me?" "I have to go, Jean." "Well, talk later." She hung up before I could respond. I sat on my couch in complete silence. The television was on, but I couldn't hear it. All I could hear was the rushing sound in my ears, the feeling of everything I thought I knew about my family crumbling around me. I looked at my bank statement on my phone. $5,400 remaining. 3 years of saving, reduced to almost nothing. I looked at the lease guarantee document I had signed, sitting in my email inbox. My name, my credit, my financial future tied to someone who didn't even want me at her goodbye party. Then I remembered something crucial. International wire transfers don't clear immediately. They take time to process, especially when they're going to a UK bank. I could still stop it. I called my bank's 24-hour international wire service. The representative who answered was professional and calm. I explained that I needed to freeze the transfer due to fraudulent circumstances. She put me on hold for 6 minutes while she looked up the transaction. When she came back, her voice was reassuring. "Mr. Jean, I can see the transfer here. It hasn't been released to the receiving bank yet. It's still in our processing system. I can freeze it for you right now. Please do that," I said. "Freeze it immediately." "Done," she said. "The funds will be returned to your account within 3 to 5 business days." After I hung up, I sat there for another moment. Then I opened my email and found the message thread with Sarah's London landlord, Mr. Pemberton. I had been copied on all the correspondence because I was the lease guarantor. I drafted a new email to him. "Dear Mr. Pemberton, I am writing to inform you that I am withdrawing as the lease guarantor for Miss Sarah, effective immediately, due to changed circumstances. Please confirm receipt of this notice. Regards, Jean." I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. At 11:47 that night, my phone buzzed with an incoming voice note. It was from my dad. I almost didn't listen to it. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, and I just wanted to go to sleep and pretend this whole day hadn't happened. But something made me press play. Dad's voice came through my phone speaker, slightly slurred. He had been drinking, which wasn't unusual for him on Friday nights. "Jean, your mother told me about tomorrow. Look, son, I need you to understand something. Sarah's always been, well, she's always been our priority. She's struggling with Brad, money's tight for them, and this London thing is her big chance. You've always been fine on your own. You don't need us the way she does. We're not saying you're not family, but you understand, right? You're the strong one. Don't ruin this for her by being selfish. Just let it go." I played the voice note a second time. I needed to be sure I had heard correctly. The words were the same. "You're the strong one," as if that justified everything, as if being capable of surviving without them meant I should have to. Memories started flooding back. Memories I had pushed down for years because it was easier not to think about them. When I was 16, I desperately wanted to attend a summer coding camp. It cost $500. I had saved $200 from mowing lawns and doing odd jobs around the neighborhood. I asked my parents if they could help with the remaining $300. Dad said they couldn't afford it. Times were tight, he said. I understood. I didn't go to the camp. That same summer, Sarah was 12 years old. She wanted to join an elite horse riding program at a stable 30 minutes from our house. The membership cost $2,000. My parents paid for it without hesitation. When I asked why they could afford that but not my coding camp, Mom said, "Sarah's really passionate about horses, Jean. You can learn coding from books." When it came time for college, I went to a state school. I worked 3 part-time jobs throughout my 4 years, sometimes pulling double shifts at the campus library and the local grocery store. I graduated with $32,000 in student loan debt despite working constantly. Sarah went to a private university. My parents paid for half her tuition. She graduated without any debt because by the time she finished school, I was already working full-time and, as Dad said, didn't need help anymore. On my 30th birthday, my parents forgot to call me. I waited all day for the phone to ring. It didn't. I finally called them at 8 o'clock that night. Mom apologized, said they had been busy. They were actually in Cancun with Sarah, celebrating her 26th birthday with a week-long vacation. They had posted photos on Facebook all day. I had seen every single one. 2 years later, for Sarah's 28th birthday, my parents threw her a party with 80 guests, rented out a restaurant, hired a photographer. They spent over $3,000 on that party. For my 32nd birthday 6 months ago, I got a text message from Mom that said, "Happy birthday, sweetie. Hope you have a great day," with a cake emoji. The pattern had always been there. I had just convinced myself it didn't matter. I was the strong one. I didn't need their attention or their money or their validation. Except that wasn't true. I did need it. I had always needed it. I had just learned not to ask for it because asking only led to disappointment. At midnight, my phone lit up with a notification. Mom had added me to the family group chat. I hadn't even realized I wasn't already in it. She was sending messages to everyone about the party tomorrow, sharing the address, the time, what food would be served. There were 12 people in the chat: aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents. Everyone was responding with enthusiasm. Can't wait. So excited for Sarah. What a wonderful opportunity. Then my Aunt Martha sent a message. "Is Jean coming?" Mom's response came quickly. "It's a small gathering, just close family." My Uncle Dave, Martha's husband, typed back, "Jean's not close family." Mom, you know what I mean. Don't start drama. Then Sarah sent a message that made my blood run cold. "Can everyone stop talking about Jean? This is my day." Hez being dramatic as usual, I took screenshots of everything. Every message, every dismissive comment, every casual cruelty. Then I typed one message to the group chat. "The $8,900 I wired to Sarah last week has been frozen and will be returned to my account. I've also withdrawn as guarantor on her London lease. Enjoy your family party." I left the group chat immediately after sending it. Within seconds, my phone started exploding with calls and texts. I turned it off completely and went to bed. I didn't sleep, but at least I didn't have to listen to them. Saturday morning arrived with harsh sunlight streaming through my bedroom window. I had maybe slept 2 hours total. I turned my phone back on at 8:15, and it immediately started buzzing with notification after notification. 73 missed calls, 46 text messages. I scrolled through them with a sense of detachment, as if I were reading about someone else's life. Mom had called 18 times and sent 12 texts. The messages ranged from angry to manipulative. The first one, sent at 12:53 in the morning, said, "How dare you do this to your sister?" The last one, sent at 7:32 that morning, said, "You're breaking your sister's heart. She's upstairs crying. Is this what you wanted?" Dad had called 9 times with 5 texts. All of them were disappointed and accusatory. "Very immature, Jean. Expected better from you. Your mother is devastated." Sarah had called 22 times and sent 15 texts. I read through them in order, watching her messages escalate from begging to threatening. 12:47 a.m. "Jean, please, this isn't funny." 1:23 a.m. "I need that money. My landlord needs it by Monday." 2:18 a.m. "You're really going to ruin my life over not being invited to a party." 3:45 a.m. "Brad says you're a vindictive asshole and he's right." 6:30 a.m. "I'm telling everyone what you did. You'll be sorry." 8:02 a.m. "Dad's having chest pains. If something happens to him, it's your fault." That last message made me pause. Dad having chest pains. Was it real or was it manipulation? With my family, it was hard to tell anymore. At 8:45, my phone rang with a call from Uncle Dave. He was the only family member I genuinely respected. He was my father's younger brother, 50 years old, a lawyer, and one of the few people in my family who had ever treated me like I mattered. "Jean," he said when I answered. His voice was serious but not angry. "I don't know the full story, but I saw that group chat last night. Are you okay?" Something about his tone, the genuine concern in his voice, broke through the wall I had built around myself. I told him everything. The money, the lease guarantee, the party exclusion, Mom's texts, Dad's voice note, Sarah's cruel Facebook habit of treating me like an ATM. I talked for 20 minutes straight, and he didn't interrupt once. When I finally stopped, there was a long silence on the other end. Then Dave said quietly, "I'm not going to that party today. Neither is Martha. We're coming to see you instead." "Dave, you don't have to do that," I protested. "It's a 2.5-hour drive. Jean, Martha, and I have watched them treat you like the backup child for years. We said nothing because we told ourselves it wasn't our place. That was wrong. I'm done being silent. Well, be there by noon." He hung up before I could argue further. Around 10 o'clock, my phone buzzed with a notification from Facebook. Sarah had posted something 30 minutes earlier. I opened it against my better judgment. It was a long post, carefully written to make her look like the victim. When you sacrifice everything for family and they turn their back on you over something petty, some people only care about themselves. Praying I can still make my dreams happen despite the people trying to tear me down. Feeling heartbroken. The post already had 63 likes and 42 comments. I scrolled through them, feeling sicker with each one. Friends and distant relatives were commenting with sympathy. "You deserve better. Toxic people need to be cut off. Stay strong, girl." Mom had commented, "We're here for you, sweetheart. Real family sticks together." Brad had commented, "Some people are just jealous of your success, babe. We don't need them." I closed Facebook and put my phone face down on my coffee table. I couldn't look at it anymore. Uncle Dave and Aunt Martha arrived at my apartment at noon exactly, carrying bags of takeout food from my favorite barbecue place. Martha hugged me tightly at the door, and I realized it had been over a year since anyone in my family had hugged me like that, like they actually cared. We sat at my small dining table and ate brisket sandwiches and coleslaw. They didn't push me to talk. They just let me exist in their presence, and it was the most comfort I had felt in months. At 2:30 in the afternoon, my email notification went off. I picked up my phone and saw a message from Mr. Pemberton, Sarah's London landlord. The subject line read, "Regarding lease agreement cancellation." I opened it with Dave and Martha watching me. My hands were shaking slightly as I read it aloud. "Dear Mr. Jean, thank you for your notice regarding your withdrawal as lease guarantor. However, I must inform you that the lease agreement cannot proceed without an acceptable guarantor. Miss Sarah has been attempting to reach you today without success. She has provided no alternative guarantor who meets our financial requirements. Unless this situation is resolved by Monday morning London time, which is Sunday evening your time, I will be obligated to offer the flat to the next applicant on my waiting list. I currently have 17 parties interested in this property. I need confirmation by 8 p.m. your time on Sunday, or the lease will be canceled. Best regards, A. Pemberton." I set my phone down and looked at Dave and Martha. "Her entire London move is falling apart," I said. The words felt surreal coming out of my mouth. Dave leaned back in his chair, studying me carefully. "The question isn't whether you should save her, Jean. The question is, at what cost to yourself, and what will actually change if you do?" We talked for 3 more hours. They didn't tell me what to do. They just asked questions, helped me think through the situation clearly. By the time they left at 6 o'clock, I still hadn't decided what I was going to do. But I felt less alone than I had in years. Sunday morning arrived too quickly. I woke up at 7 o'clock after another restless night. I still hadn't decided what to do about Sarah's situation. Part of me felt vindicated, like justice was being served. Part of me felt guilty, like I was the villain everyone was making me out to be on Facebook. I made coffee and checked social media out of habit. That was a mistake. Sarah had posted again on Facebook at 6:30 that morning. This post was longer and more detailed, clearly designed to paint me as the worst person alive without actually naming me directly. When you sacrifice everything for family and they turn their back on you over something petty, I'm sitting here in my apartment that I'm about to lose, watching my dream job slip away because one person decided to be vindictive. Some people only care about themselves. They'll smile to your face, promise to help you, and then pull the rug out from under you the moment you don't worship them enough, praying I can still make my dreams happen despite the people trying to tear me down. Real family wouldn't do this, feeling devastated and betrayed. The post had 114 likes and 78 comments. I made the mistake of reading them. Friends from her high school were commenting, "You deserve so much better. Cut toxic people out of your life. Who would do this to you?" Extended family members I barely knew were chiming in. Cousin Tracy. Some people are just jealous of other people's success. Aunt Karen, Dad's sister. Stay strong, sweetie. God has a plan. Mom had commented again. We're here for you, sweetheart. Real family sticks together. Some people never learn what family means. Brad had written a longer comment. Babe, you've been nothing but generous and kind to everyone in your family, your whole life. Some people are just toxic and jealous. They can't stand to see you succeed. We don't need people like that in our lives. You're going to make it to London and you're going to be amazing, and everyone who doubted you will see how wrong they were. I felt sick reading it. She was rewriting history completely, making herself the victim when she was the one who had excluded me, used me, and discarded me. At 9:15, my phone buzzed with a message from my cousin Tyler. He was Uncle Dave's son, 35 years old, and someone I had always gotten along with. Dude, I'm so pissed right now. Want to know something Sarah doesn't know you know? I typed back immediately. What? Last Thanksgiving, I was at your parents' house early, helping set up. I went to the garage to grab more chairs and I overheard Sarah and Brad talking. They didn't know I was there. She was telling him how she was going to work you for the money because you're, quote, easy to manipulate, and you always come through. She literally said, "Hell, give me whatever I want if I cry enough. Has been trained that way since we were kids." My stomach dropped. I stared at those words on my screen. Trained. Like I was a dog she had conditioned to perform tricks. Tyler sent another message. Wait, there's more. Hold on. A minute later, he sent me a screenshot. It was from a group chat with Sarah and 3 of her friends from 3 weeks ago, right after she had asked me for the money. Sarah's message read, "My brother's so predictable. Asked him for $9K and he said yes in like 2 days. Didn't even have to do the full sob story." One of her friends had responded, "Damn. Wish I had a brother like that." Sarah wrote back, "Hes useful when I need him to be. Otherwise Hes kind of annoying TBH. Always trying to give advice nobody asked for." I read those messages 5 times. Each time they hurt more. This wasn't just about the party anymore. This was about a lifetime of being used, manipulated, and taken for granted. I wasn't her brother to her. I was a resource to be exploited when convenient, and ignored when not needed. At 11 o'clock, my phone rang. It was Mom. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Jean," she said, her voice strained. "You need to fix this. Sarah's falling apart. Her whole future is at stake. Do you understand what you're doing to her? Do you understand what she did to me?" I asked, my voice surprisingly calm. "She didn't invite you to one party," Mom said, exasperation clear in her tone. "You're destroying her entire life over one party. That's not proportional, Jean. That's cruel. Tell everyone to come to my apartment at 3 o'clock today," I said. "Sarah, you, Dad, and Brad. If you want to talk about this, we do it face to face. All of us together. No exceptions. We can't just drop everything and drive to Austin on a Sunday," Mom protested. "Then Sarah can figure out her London situation on her own," I said. 3 o'clock. "I'll text you my address, even though you've only been here twice in the 4 years I've lived here." I hung up before she could respond. My heart was pounding, but I felt clearer than I had in days. I was done being manipulated. I was done being the family's emotional and financial support system while being treated like I didn't matter. At 1:45 in the afternoon, my phone rang from an unknown number with a UK country code. I answered cautiously. Hello. Is this Jean? A woman's voice, British accent, professional and crisp. Yes, this is Jean. My name is Patricia Henderson. I'm the hiring manager for the marketing position your sister Sarah has accepted with our firm in London. I apologize for calling on a Sunday, but I'm trying to reach Sarah and she's not answering her phone or emails. Her application listed you as her emergency contact in the UK for lease matters. My chest tightened. I see. I'm calling because we've just been informed by Mr. Pemberton, the landlord, that there's an issue with Sarah's housing situation. Our company requires confirmed housing before we finalize visa sponsorship. It's a legal requirement. We have another candidate who is ready to proceed if Sarah cannot confirm her housing by tomorrow morning, London time. That's midnight tonight your time. Can you help me reach her? I sat down slowly on my couch. I had more power in this situation than I had realized. I wasn't just the money source. I was literally the key to whether Sarah's job happened at all. I can reach her, I said carefully. We're actually meeting this afternoon to discuss the housing situation. That's a relief, Patricia said. Please understand, we're really hoping Sarah works out. She interviewed brilliantly, and we think she'd be an excellent addition to our team. But we cannot delay the visa process. We need someone to start in 10 days. If she cannot confirm housing with an acceptable guarantor by midnight your time tonight, well, have to move forward with our backup candidate. I understand, I said. I'll make sure she knows the timeline. Thank you, Jean. I appreciate your help. Please have Sarah contact me as soon as possible. After she hung up, I sat in silence. The enormity of the situation was settling over me. I held Sarah's entire future in my hands. One phone call, one signature, one wire transfer, and her dream job could be saved. Or I could do nothing, and she would lose everything. The question was, what did I owe her? What did I owe any of them? They arrived at 3:17, 14 minutes late. I watched from my apartment window as Mom's silver sedan pulled into the parking lot. Mom and Dad got out from the front seats. Sarah and Brad climbed out of the back. They all looked exhausted, like they hadn't slept any better than I had. I opened my apartment door before they could knock. We exchanged awkward greetings, no hugs, no warmth, just stiff hellos and forced politeness. They filed into my small living room and sat down. Mom and Dad took the couch. Sarah and Brad sat in the two chairs I had pulled in from my dining table. I remained standing. I had prepared for this. On my coffee table, I had printed out bank statements showing the $8,900 transfer, the lease guarantee document I had signed, screenshots of the group chat messages, screenshots of Sarah's Facebook posts, and Tyler's evidence of her group chat with her friends. I'm going to talk, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Nobody interrupts me. When I'm done, you can respond. Dad started to say something, but I held up my hand. I said no interruptions. I walked them through everything methodically. The money I had given Sarah, money I had saved for 3 years to buy my first home, the lease I had co-signed, putting my own credit and financial future at risk, the party exclusion, being told I wasn't family after I had sacrificed nearly everything I had to help her. Mom's text telling me not to make it awkward, Dad's voice note calling me the strong one, as if that justified neglecting me. I showed them Sarah's Facebook post, the one painting herself as the victim. I showed them the group chat screenshots, where she called me annoying and useful only when she needed something. I showed them the messages where she had bragged to her friends about manipulating me. Sarah's face went pale when she saw those screenshots. Brad looked angry. Mom looked confused. Dad stared at the floor. Here is what's going to happen, I said when I finished presenting the evidence. I received a call today from Patricia Henderson, Sarah's employer in London. They need housing confirmation by midnight tonight, or they're moving to their backup candidate. Sarah, you have 2 choices. Sarah was crying now, but I kept going. I couldn't stop. If I stopped, I would lose my nerve. Option 1. I reinstate the money and the lease guarantee. In exchange, you sign a promissory note, legally binding, with a payment schedule. You'll pay me back $9,200. The extra $300 is for my bank fees and the time I've spent dealing with this. Monthly payments of $500 starting 60 days after you begin your job in London. If you miss 2 payments, the full amount becomes due immediately, and I take you to court. Brad stood up. This is blackmail, man. You can't do this. Sit down, I said, my voice harder than I had ever heard it. I'm not finished. He sat down slowly, glaring at me. You'll also post a public apology on Facebook. I continued, looking directly at Sarah. Not a vague post, a real apology, explaining what actually happened, full accountability, and all 4 of you will attend family therapy. 6 sessions minimum. If anyone misses a session without a legitimate emergency, the deal is off, and the money goes back to me immediately. Mom's eyes widened. Jean, honey, you're being unreasonable. We're family. We don't need legal documents and therapy. We can work this out ourselves. We've been working it out ourselves for 32 years, I said. And here we are. So, no, we're trying something different. Sarah wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I'm not humiliating myself on Facebook. Everyone will think I'm a terrible person. Option 2, I said, ignoring her protest. I do nothing. Sarah loses the apartment, probably loses the job offer, and stays in Houston with her $42,000 salary and her maxed-out credit cards. I keep my money, my peace of mind, and my dignity, and I go no contact with all of you, permanently. The room went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop on my carpet. You have 30 minutes to decide, I said. I walked into my bedroom and closed the door behind me. I could hear them through the door, their voices rising and falling. Sarah was crying harder now. Brad was angry, his voice sharp and accusing. Mom was trying to mediate, her tone pleading. Dad remained mostly silent, which was typical for him. He always let Mom handle the emotional labor. I sat on my bed and stared at my hands. They were shaking slightly. I had never stood up to my family like this before. I had never demanded anything from them, never set boundaries, never said no. I had always been the strong one, the reliable one, the one who didn't need anything. But I did need things. I needed respect. I needed to be valued. I needed to matter. 26 minutes later, there was a knock on my bedroom door. I opened it to find all 4 of them standing there. Sarah stepped forward, her arms crossed over her chest, her face red and blotchy from crying. Fine, she said, her voice tight with anger. He'll sign your stupid document. But you're an asshole for doing this. You're holding my entire future hostage. No, Sarah, I said, looking her directly in the eyes. You held our relationship hostage the moment you decided I was only valuable for what I could give you. I'm just the first person who stopped playing along. I pulled out a pre-drafted promissory note from my desk drawer. Uncle Dave had prepared it for me yesterday when I had called him asking for legal advice. It was professional, thorough, and legally binding. Sarah took the document with shaking hands and read through it. Brad read over her shoulder, his jaw clenched. When she got to the end, she looked at me with something between hatred and desperation. Don't sign it, Sarah, Brad said quietly. Well, figure something else out. With what money? Sarah snapped at him. Your credit's destroyed, and we have $800 in our checking account. I need this job, Brad. I need this chance. She signed the document. Her signature was shaky, but it was there. I took the paper from her and signed it as well, then made copies for both of us. What about the Facebook post? I asked. Sarah's eyes flashed with anger. What do you want me to say? The truth, I said. I handed her my phone with a note I had typed out. Something like this. You can adjust the wording to sound like you, but the facts need to be accurate. She read it, her face getting redder with each line. This is humiliating. You have until 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, I said. If it's not posted by then, I send Patricia Henderson an email withdrawing my lease guarantee. Mom stepped forward. And the therapy. I pulled up an email on my phone. First session is scheduled for 2 weeks from now. Dad, you received the confirmation email an hour ago. All 4 of us, 90-minute sessions, every other week. If anyone doesn't show up without a valid reason, I consider the contract void. Dad nodded slowly. He looked older than I had ever seen him. His shoulders slumped, his face drawn. "Now for my part," I said. I pulled up my banking app on my phone and, with all of them watching, reinstated the wire transfer. It took 3 minutes to process. I took a screenshot showing the transaction in progress and sent it to Sarah. Then I opened my email and wrote to Mr. Pemberton. "Dear Mr. Pemberton, this is Jean, writing to inform you that my role as lease guarantor is hereby reinstated. The funds for first month's rent and security deposit are currently being transferred and should reach the UK bank within 24 hours. Please proceed with the lease agreement as originally planned. Best regards, Jean." I hit send with everyone watching. Then I called Patricia Henderson's number. It rang 4 times before she answered. "Patricia, this is Jean. I'm here with Sarah right now. I wanted to let you know that the housing situation has been resolved. The funds are transferring as we speak, and the lease guarantee is back in place. Everything is moving forward." Patricia's relief was audible through the phone. "That's wonderful news. Sarah, are you there?" "I'm here," Sarah said quietly. "I'll email you the final visa paperwork tonight. We're so excited to have you join the team. Thank you, Jean, for helping sort this out." We said our goodbyes, and I hung up. The 5 of us stood in my living room, the air thick with tension and unspoken words. Sarah paused at my apartment door as they were leaving. She turned to look at me, her eyes still red from crying. "I hope you're happy, Jean. You got your power trip." "I hope London's everything you dreamed of, Sarah," I said quietly. "I really do. But this is the last time I sacrifice my peace for people who don't value me." She left without another word. Brad followed her, giving me one last glare. Mom and Dad walked out together, not saying anything. The door closed behind them, and suddenly my apartment was silent again. I sat down on my couch, the adrenaline draining from my body all at once. My phone buzzed with a text from Uncle Dave. "How did it go?" I typed back. I stood up for myself, for the first time in my life. His response came immediately. "Proud of you, nephew." I sat in that silence for 20 minutes, processing everything that had just happened. I had drawn a line in the sand. I had demanded respect. I had refused to be used anymore, and it felt terrifying and liberating all at once. Monday morning arrived with gray skies and the threat of rain. I woke up at 7:30 and immediately checked Facebook, even though I told myself I wouldn't. Sarah had posted at 8:47, 13 minutes before my deadline. The post was shorter than I had outlined for her, but it hit the essential points. "I need to apologize for some posts I made this weekend. My brother Gene helped me financially with my move to London, contributing nearly $9,000 and co-signing my lease. After he did this, I excluded him from my farewell party. When he understandably got upset, I painted myself as the victim on social media. That was wrong. Gene has always been there for me, and I took him for granted. I'm sorry, Gene, and I'm sorry to everyone who I misled with my previous posts." The comments section was quieter this time. A few people had written supportive messages. "It takes courage to admit when you're wrong. Good for you for being accountable." But many people didn't comment at all. Some of her friends who had been so quick to condemn me in the earlier posts were notably silent now. Mom had commented, "We're proud of you for taking responsibility, sweetheart." Uncle Dave had commented, "This is growth, Sarah. Gene's a good man, and I'm glad you two are working things out." I closed Facebook and got ready for work. Life had to continue. Even when everything felt uncertain, 2 weeks later, I drove to Houston for the first family therapy session. I had thought about canceling a dozen times. Part of me wanted to just walk away from all of them, to start fresh without the weight of their dysfunction dragging me down. But another part of me, a quieter part, wanted to believe that things could actually change. Dr. Rachel Weinstein's office was in a professional building near the medical center. She was in her mid-50s with kind eyes and gray hair pulled back in a loose bun. The waiting room had comfortable chairs and abstract art on the walls that was probably meant to be calming. When we all filed into her office, the tension was immediate. We sat in a semicircle, me on one end, then Dad, then Mom, then Sarah, on the far end. Dr. Weinstein sat across from us with a notepad in her lap. "Thank you all for being here," she said, her voice warm but professional. "I know this isn't easy. Let's start by establishing some ground rules. First, everyone gets to speak without interruption. Second, we focus on feelings and experiences, not accusations. Third, what's said in this room stays in this room. Can everyone agree to these rules?" We all nodded, though Sarah's nod was reluctant. That first session was mostly about establishing our individual perspectives. Dr. Weinstein asked each of us to share how we saw the current family dynamic. Dad spoke first, his words carefully chosen and diplomatic. Mom went next, her explanation focused on how much she loved both of her children equally. Sarah talked about feeling stressed and overwhelmed, about how the London opportunity was the first good thing to happen to her in years. When it was my turn, I told the truth. I talked about feeling invisible, about being the reliable one, the strong one, the one who was expected to give endlessly without needing anything in return, about watching Sarah receive more attention, more resources, more grace for her mistakes while I was expected to have everything figured out, about feeling like I only mattered when I was useful. By the end of that session, nothing was resolved. But at least everything was out in the open. Sarah left for London 3 days after that first therapy session, on a Wednesday afternoon. Her flight left from Houston at 6 in the evening. I drove down to see her off, surprising everyone, including myself. At the airport, we stood together near the security checkpoint. Brad was there, Mom and Dad, a few of Sarah's friends. The atmosphere was bittersweet, excitement mixed with sadness. When it was time for Sarah to go through security, she hugged everyone. When she got to me, she hesitated for just a moment, then wrapped her arms around me. It was brief and awkward, but it was real. "Thanks for making this possible," she whispered. "I guess. Good luck over there," I said. "I mean it." She pulled back and looked at me. Really looked at me. Maybe for the first time in years. "I know you do." Then she was gone, disappearing through security with her carry-on bag and her dreams of a new life in London. The therapy sessions continued over the following months, every other week, like clockwork. Session 2 was harder. Mom broke down crying, admitting that she had always worried more about Sarah because Sarah seemed fragile, seemed like she needed more help. She had never considered that by treating me like I didn't need anything, she was actually neglecting me. Session 3 was conducted partly via video call because Sarah was in London. She joined us from her small apartment, 8 hours ahead of our time. She admitted, haltingly, that she had always thought I had everything together, that I didn't need anyone. She had never realized that maybe I seemed that way because I had learned early on that asking for help led to disappointment. Session 4 was the session where Dad finally spoke more than a few sentences. He talked about how he had been raised by a father who believed men should be stoic and self-sufficient. He had unconsciously passed that same expectation on to me. He admitted he was ashamed of the voice note he had sent me, ashamed that he had been drunk and thoughtless, ashamed that he had prioritized one child over another. Session 5 was mine. I talked about my struggle with self-worth, about how I had measured my value by how useful I was to others. Dr. Weinstein helped me see that I had been complicit in my own mistreatment, by never setting boundaries, by never saying no, by always being available, no matter the cost to myself. Session 6, our last required session, was about moving forward, about what changes needed to happen, what realistic expectations looked like, how we could build healthier relationships with each other. After that 6th session, we agreed to continue therapy voluntarily. Not every week, but once a month. It was progress, slow and sometimes painful, but progress nonetheless. In those months, I started seeing Dr. Weinstein individually as well. Every other week, she helped me understand that the family dynamic wouldn't change overnight, might never fully change. Some patterns were too deeply ingrained, but I could change how I responded to those patterns. I could build a life that wasn't centered on seeking their approval. Uncle Dave and Aunt Martha became my chosen family during that time. We had dinner together every other Sunday. They came to my apartment, or I drove to Houston to see them. They were the family I had always needed, supportive without being suffocating, loving without being manipulative. I started dating in October, 4 months after everything had happened with Sarah. Her name was Amanda, and I met her through work. She was a consultant for one of our client companies, smart and funny, and completely outside my family drama. On our third date, I told her the whole story about Sarah and the money and the party. I was nervous she would think I was petty or vindictive. Instead, she looked at me seriously and said, "You stood up for yourself. That's not petty. That's brave." 70 days after Sarah started her job in London, my phone pinged with a notification from my banking app. Payment received. $500. I checked my email and found a short message from Sarah. First payment sent. London's expensive, but I'm managing. Job is intense, but good. Talk soon. I wrote back. Glad to hear it. Keep me updated. It was civil, maybe even friendly. It was a start. 4.5 months after Sarah moved to London, I got a call at work from a UK number. My heart jumped, worried something was wrong. I stepped out of a meeting to answer it. "Jean." Sarah's voice, thick with emotion. "What's wrong?" I asked immediately. "Nothing's wrong," she said, and I could hear that she was crying, but they sounded like good tears. "Everything's actually really right. Jean, I got promoted. Senior marketing manager. They're giving me a 32% raise. Sarah, that's amazing," I said, genuinely happy for her. I know, she said, her words tumbling over each other. And I was sitting in my flat tonight, looking at my payment schedule to you, doing the math on when I'd have everything paid off, and I realized something. She paused, and I waited. "You didn't have to help me. After everything, after how we treated you, you could have let me fail. But you didn't. You gave me the hardest love I've ever received, and it was exactly what I needed. I've been so angry at you for months, Jean. So angry about the promissory note and the therapy and making me apologize publicly. But tonight it hit me. You're the only person who ever held me accountable. Mom and Dad, they enable me. Brad enables me. You made me grow up." I felt my throat tighten with emotion. I stepped further away from my office, finding an empty conference room. "I'm paying off the entire balance tomorrow," Sarah continued. "All of it. You'll have your money back in full. And I'm covering the interest you lost by giving it to me, the opportunity cost. And Jean, thank you. I'm sorry it took me this long to really understand, but thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave you every reason to." The next day, my bank account showed a deposit of $9,637, the full $9,200 I was owed, plus $437 extra. Sarah texted me a screenshot of the transaction with a message. "We're square. More than square. Thank you for everything, big brother." 6 months after Sarah moved to London, I found myself back in Houston for Christmas. It was the first holiday I had spent with my family in 3 years. I had been avoiding them during holidays, making excuses about work or other commitments. But this year felt different. Things had shifted, slowly and imperfectly. But genuinely. I brought Amanda with me. We had been dating for 6 months, and she had become one of the most important people in my life. She was nervous about meeting my family, given everything I had told her. I squeezed her hand as we pulled into my parents' driveway. The house was decorated the way it always had been, with white lights strung along the roofline and a wreath on the front door. Mom opened the door before we could knock, pulling me into a hug that lasted longer than usual. "Jean," she said, her voice warm, "and you must be Amanda. We're so glad you're here." Inside, the house smelled like cinnamon and pine. Dad was in the living room, and he stood up when he saw me, extending his hand and then pulling me into a brief but genuine hug. "Good to see you, son," he said. He shook Amanda's hand and welcomed her warmly. The energy was different than I remembered from past Christmases. It was lighter, less tense, People seemed genuinely happy to see me, not just going through the motions of family obligation. At 3 o'clock Houston time, Sarah called from London via video chat. It was 11 at night there, and she was at Brad's parents' house, who had moved to London the previous month. When my face appeared on the tablet screen Mom was holding, Sarah's face lit up with a genuine smile. "Jean! Amanda! I'm so glad you're there." We talked for 40 minutes. Sarah shared stories about London, about her promotion, about learning to navigate the tube and finding the best coffee shops near her office. She asked me about my life, about work, about my relationship with Amanda. She actually listened to my answers, asking follow-up questions, engaging with what I was saying. Before we ended the call, Sarah's expression turned more serious. "John, I've been thinking about something. When I come home next summer for a visit, I want to take you to dinner, my treat. A real thank you, face to face. You changed my life by refusing to enable me anymore. I'm not sure I've said that clearly enough. You saved me from myself." I felt tears prick at my eyes. "I'd like that, Sarah." After we hung up, I excused myself and went to the bathroom. Needing a moment alone, I stared at my reflection in the mirror, this bathroom where I had spent so much of my childhood. I thought about that night 7 months ago, standing in my apartment at 11:25, making the decision to freeze the wire transfer. I had been terrified and angry and heartbroken. That decision had changed everything. That night, I lay in my childhood bedroom with Amanda asleep beside me. Mom had insisted we stay overnight, rather than driving back to Austin in the dark. I stared at the ceiling, the same ceiling I had stared at as a teenager, and thought about the journey I had been on. Setting boundaries hadn't destroyed my family. It had rebuilt it on a foundation of honesty instead of obligation. Some relationships require distance to find their proper shape. Love without respect is just manipulation with a prettier name. Real family doesn't mean accepting mistreatment. It means caring enough to demand better. The next morning, I woke up early. Dad was already awake, sitting on the back porch with a cup of coffee. I poured myself a cup and joined him. We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching the sun rise over the suburban neighborhood. "Son," Dad said finally, his voice quiet. "I've been thinking a lot about that voice note I sent you, about calling you the strong one like it was a reason to neglect you." I waited, letting him find his words. "You know what I finally understood in therapy? Strong people aren't strong because they don't need support. They're strong because they've learned to survive without it. That doesn't mean they should have to." He turned to look at me, his eyes wet. "I'm sorry I confused your resilience with not needing your father. I'm working on it. I know I can't undo 32 years, but I'm trying." Something in my chest cracked open. "That means more than you know, Dad." We sat together as the sun climbed higher, father and son, drinking coffee and not needing to fill the silence with words. Later that day, Uncle Dave and Aunt Martha came over for Christmas dinner. Dave pulled me aside in the kitchen while everyone else was in the living room. "I'm proud of you, nephew," he said, his hand on my shoulder. "What you did back in June, standing up for yourself, that took real courage. You showed everyone that love doesn't mean being a doormat. That's a lesson Sarah needed, but I think your parents needed it even more. I couldn't have done it without you and Aunt Martha backing me up," I said. "Family's supposed to be your safe place, not your proving ground," Dave said. "You reminded us all of that." That evening, as Amanda and I drove back to Austin on Interstate 35, my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "I've been journaling a lot lately, therapy, homework. Wrote this today and wanted to share it with you. My brother taught me that the people who truly love you aren't the ones who give you everything you want. They're the ones who care enough to give you what you need, even when it's hard, even when you hate them for it. Jean gave me the gift of accountability wrapped in the paper of tough love. It's the best gift I've ever received, even though it took me months to unwrap it. Love you, big brother. Drive safe." I read the message to Amanda, my voice catching on the last line. She reached over and squeezed my hand. 3 months after that Christmas, I was sitting in my apartment on a Saturday morning in March. Spring had arrived in Austin, bringing warm weather and blooming wildflowers. Amanda was in the kitchen making breakfast, singing off-key to a song on the radio. I smiled at the sound, at how natural it felt to have her in my space, in my life. I checked my phone and saw messages from various family members. Mom had sent a text asking about my week, actually curious about the details of my life. Dad had forwarded me an article about project management trends he thought I would find interesting. Sarah had sent photos from a weekend trip she and Brad had taken to Edinburgh. My savings account had rebuilt nicely. I had $11,400 saved now, getting closer to my goal of a house down payment. The money Sarah had repaid me had gone right back into savings, and I had been disciplined about adding to it each month. The relationships in my family weren't perfect. They probably never would be. Mom still sometimes defaulted to worrying more about Sarah. Dad still sometimes struggled to show emotion or vulnerability. Sarah still occasionally expected things to come easily. But they were trying. We were all trying, and the relationships felt real now, built on honesty instead of manipulation, on respect instead of guilt. I opened my journal, something Dr. Weinstein had encouraged me to start during our individual therapy sessions. I had been resistant at first, thinking it was silly or self-indulgent, but I had come to value this time in the morning, this space to process my thoughts and feelings. I wrote, I learned that setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's self-preservation. For years, I believed that being family meant accepting whatever treatment came my way. I thought love meant sacrificing until there was nothing left of myself. I was wrong. Real love requires honesty. It requires the courage to say, this hurts me, and it needs to stop. It requires the strength to walk away from people who won't meet you halfway, even when those people are your own blood. But here's what I didn't expect. When you finally demand respect, some people will surprise you. They'll rise to meet you. They'll do the work. Not everyone, maybe not even most people, but the ones who truly love you will try. My sister needed to face consequences. She needed to understand that actions have results. By always rescuing her, my parents were actually keeping her trapped in a cycle of dependency and entitlement. The kindest thing I ever did for Sarah was refuse to be her safety net, because it forced her to build her own wings. I'm not the strong one anymore. I'm just Gene, a man with boundaries, with self-respect, with standards for how I allow people to treat me. And that's enough. I'm enough. I always was. I closed my journal and set it on the coffee table. Amanda called from the kitchen. Breakfast is ready. Also, your mom called. She wants to know if we're free next month. She's planning a cookout and specifically said to save the date because, and I quote, Jean comes first this time. I walked into the kitchen where sunlight streamed through the windows, making everything glow golden. I wrapped my arms around Amanda from behind as she plated scrambled eggs and toast. Tell her we'll be there, I said. I looked around my apartment, at the life I had built on my own terms, the furniture I had picked out, the books on the shelves that reflected my interests, the photos on the walls of people who valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. For the first time in 32 years, I felt truly seen by my family, not for what I could give them, but for who I was as a person. And that feeling, hard-won and honestly earned, was worth more than any amount of money. The journey had been painful. There had been moments when I thought I had made a terrible mistake, when the guilt and the anger and the fear had threatened to overwhelm me. But standing in my kitchen that morning, with Amanda humming beside me and my phone full of messages from family members who were genuinely trying to do better, I knew I had made the right choice. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is refuse to enable their worst behaviors. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is demand to be treated with respect. And sometimes, just sometimes, people will surprise you by actually rising to meet those expectations. I had learned that I deserved more than being the family's backup plan, their emotional support animal, their ATM. I deserved to be valued, to be seen, to matter. And by refusing to accept anything less, I had shown my family what real love actually looked like. Not the kind of love that smooths over every problem and enables every bad decision, but the kind of love that says, I care about you enough to tell you the truth, even when it's hard. I care about you enough to hold you accountable. I care about you enough to let you fail so you can learn to succeed. That was the gift I had given Sarah. And in a strange way, it was the gift I had given myself too. Now I want to ask you something. Have you ever been in a situation where you felt taken for granted by family or people close to you, where you kept giving and giving but never felt truly valued? How did you handle it? Did you set boundaries, or did you keep sacrificing your own needs? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It really helps me know what kind of content connects with you. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. I share stories like this regularly, stories about real people facing real challenges and finding the courage to stand up for themselves. Share this video with someone who might need to hear it, maybe someone who's struggling with family dynamics, or someone who has trouble setting boundaries. Sometimes, we all need a reminder that it's okay to demand respect, even from the people we love. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I hope it gave you something to think about, maybe even some courage to make changes in your own life if you need to. Remember, you are enough, exactly as you are. You don't have to earn love through sacrifice. Real love respects boundaries. Take care of yourselves. Until next time.